Hello everyone, Micah Murphy here. This is what you might call some political prophecy, which I don't get into much, but I do whenever the Lord tells me to. And all I can say is what the Lord has told me. You know, prophets aren't perfect people. Prophets are people like you. And so the Lord doesn't always even give prophets the exact times or dates or words. Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. So sometimes I'll prophesy about something and people will say, well, who is it? You know, or when is it? And if I don't have the word, I'm not just going to make it up and give it to you, because I stand or fall to my master, which is Jesus Christ. So, but what the Lord told me was that in the Republican Party, during the first half of this decade, from 2020 to 2030, that there would be two heads in the Republican Party that would fall, and that four heads would rise to replace it. Now, a head, he spoke to me, means like an authority, a special type of authority, a special type of promotion, special type of dominion, and a platform and power that maybe not all other run-of-the-mill politicians might have. They might have a special seat of power in a committee, something like that. So that's why he referred to it as a head. It will be some people with power, like extra power, that not all people in government have. So two will fall and four will rise to replace it. He did tell me that it will probably have a lot to do with the prayers of his saints. So there might be a couple people in your mind you've been praying for. Maybe you're a Republican and a servant of the Lord, and you've been praying, man, this one or two or three really needs to go because they're hindering it, and it might be one of those. So I do know that it is attached to certain people's prayers, that God's listening to your prayers. So that's going to happen. So the last time the Lord told me something like that was back whenever John McCain died, and that that senator who used to march with Martin Luther King Jr. back in the days, and he was a Democratic senator. And then I think around that time, there's some other people that either didn't run for office again or something happened, and so that was the other time the Lord told me he was going to take some people down out of Washington. And I want everybody to understand, I'm not calling for any violent behavior. I don't have any hatred in my heart for any of the people I've mentioned or in the prophecy. I'm just giving what the Lord's told me. You know, how it happens, what it's going to look like, he didn't tell me. So, but since we have his word now, you can use it and pray. You know, bring down, you can say, Lord, bring down these two heads that you're talking about and replace them with four. We can pray the Lord's will. In fact, that's what a lot of times that's why he reveals the Lord's will to us, is so that we can pray it. Also, the Lord told me that there's a lot of people on YouTube I've seen lately that have risen up, and they're these prophets, you know, and there's a lot of them. I have no doubt they are real prophets, but some of them are not. And you know, I'm going to say this, and I'm just going to say this. Just take it for what it is. Paul talks about how he didn't boast in all of his revelations and these massive experiences he had with the Lord. Paul, who wrote most of the New Testament Bible, because he didn't want any man to think of him more than they should think of any other man, so that he wouldn't be, you know, lifted up in the eyes of the people. Well, Paul's experiencing all these revelations, you know, but every so often he will let you know this happened or that happened, because every so often, you know, people's faith and their hope just needs to be uplifted. But some people just sit there and, you know, Paul said, we don't preach ourselves, we preach Christ and him crucified. And by the way, that's not just saying Jesus Christ was crucified, period, the end. The crucifixion of Christ is the message and the ministry of Christ, which happened physically, and now it's still happening spiritually. So when he says, I'm preaching Christ and him crucified, he said, I'm preaching what Christ is doing in ministry right now on the earth. So, because the Bible is coded, you have to have spiritual eyes and spiritual ears to be open to understand what it really means for us today. So, some of these people on YouTube that are professing to be prophets, God just told me to tell you, look around, really pray for this, because some of this is not good, and don't give your money to these people. A lot of them are doing it because they figured out they can get rich by sharing these magnificent experiences with the Lord. I don't know if they're true or not, but I know that Paul set for us an example that we don't need to be going and sharing around every experience we have with everyone. Sometimes God calls us to share some deep things and experience as a testimony to prove just how big and good, how real He is, how big and good He is, and that He can do that for you, which He, in the video yesterday, He said He's going to start doing for many of His faithful saints, giving them supernatural experiences. But just watch out for, a prophet is not a perfect person. There is no perfect prophet. But there are people who are not prophets that are pretending to be. And a prophet can get a word wrong. A prophet can, there were numerous times in the Bible even that if you believe that every time a prophet said a wrong word he should be stoned, then it's talking about a prophet with a malicious, hateful intent to purposefully lead the people away from God. A human being who is a true prophet and might get a word wrong, or through his filter might come through a little bit different than it would someone else. That happens at times with people. That's why Paul said that prophecy is the best gift and to covet that above all gifts. But he still said even in that, sometimes they will fail, because prophecy also has the if factor. Your obedience and prayer is required to persevere and pray for that thing. So God does nothing without revealing it to His servants, the prophets, first. So the prophets are God's servants. They're not servants to man. That's why some of them seem kind of out there if you're comparing it to maybe some other people you've seen. But just watch out for a lot of these YouTube prophets. Some of them are real, some of them aren't. But just be careful about who you give your money to, because some of them have figured out that they can make money by sharing big, magnificent, mysterious things that have happened. And, we're coming to find out that some of the things that we were told a year ago, aren't really happening. So if you look and you see someone who is continually getting it wrong, and a lot of their message they're preaching about themselves and all the experiences they've had, that might be a way to test the spirits, to be like, you know what, I'm not really getting fed by this person. But if they're making you think that they just had all these experiences with God, and then also a lot of their prophecies haven't really come to pass, it's time to move on. So, God calls me every so often to give a word to protect His sheep from the wolves in sheep's clothing. And some of these people know they're doing it, some of them don't. But just watch out who you're giving your money to, because some of them have figured out that they can make money off of the body of Christ. So that's the word today. Pray God's will. 2 heads in the Republican Party will fall. 4 will take its place in the first half of this decade. So we'll be back with you shortly. Thanks for tuning in.